So are you all seeing this presentation? I'd like to welcome you all to in participating in our Festival of Social Sciences, and in particular our project that looks at homeward bound housing experiences of refugees. As well as myself, I've Akosiwa with me today to kind of talk about our research and really sort of help unpick the housing experiences of refugees in the UK. It's a part of our project that we've been doing for the last 3 years nearly, and we'd like to take you on a journey of what we found out and some of the things we've been using to kind of unpick those lived experiences. So today I want to kind of give you the context, like I say, of our research and our outputs, and that's been quite a significant thing for us, which has been different from some of the other ways in which you see research out there. And in particular, I want us to kind of discuss the comic, which we produce with our partners in Canada, who are graphic designers, and illustrators, comic book writers there, as well as an iDoc that we've done with a documentary maker. Afterwards, we've got space for questions and answers as well. Okay, so what's really important is to kind of really have a think about those experiences of refugees in the UK, and refugees very much have been a part of history of movement of people around the globe for centuries. And what we really want to talk about this, because it's very much about moving from one place to another and kind of settling, and it's about that settlement and that experience, and hence housing is significantly important in that process of settling. Just like I say, refugees have been a part of the movement of people for centuries. Now it it was in the UK that it was that we found out that the focus is the UK. But what I want to sort of start off with is a definition which came from the United Nations Convention, the 1951 Convention on the Status of Refugees, and they define it as being owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership of a particular social group, or political opinion, is outside the country of his nationality and is unable, or owing to such fears, is unwilling to avail himself of the protection of what country or not having a nationality and being outside the country of his former habitual residence as a result of such events, is unable, or owing to such fears is unwilling to return to it. So that's part of Article 1. And like I say, refugees have been a part of a movement of people, but more recent years, particularly after during the Second World War, the world and many nations around it felt there was a need to kind of do something to provide support for people that, because of war or other factors or fear of persecution, needed some kind of support. That very much is a definition in terms of who is a refugee, in terms of movement. In the British context, we also use the word asylum seeker. That is somebody who is seeking asylum from that, but it's not yet given status. So that's an important thing to remember and recognize in this context. When we think about the world today, it's worth actually having a look at how this upheaval actually impacts. What we see looking at these trends is that people have in their millions been forcibly displaced across the globe. And there are a number of different places and destinations in where they end up. So often it is sort of neighboring countries, and some of the sort of recent upheavals and wars that are occurring today, we start seeing people moving in to countries close to their place of origin. But we also see people moving far and far wide as well, and that's some of the ways in which we recontext the context of Britain. clearly, as you can see from some of these images, that the movement is in its millions, and that does really mean that the issues of refugees and their experiences is common and is occurring across the globe. However, like I say, there are sort of issues that we need to think about. It is a common occurrence. It has happened across the globe, and it does continue to happen. And people are having to, for various reasons we mentioned there, move to other places and settle in other places. However, what we're also sort of seeing is that the issue of migration and migrants themselves are seen very much seen as a concern and an issue. And in the British context in particular, we see this sometimes talked about as being a problem. This has particularly been the case in the post-war period, but over before that, from the start of the 19th century, we've also seen the issue of migration being seen as a problem. And this often it can happen in a variety of different ways. But one of the things that really occurs in this is the use of ways in which other people are talked about, those migrants are talked about, and language in that sense is very important. Whether it's you know, the media or politicians talking about these things to either to gain votes or to sense highlight or sensationalize some of the issues that are occurring out there, but it's had a real concern and a real problem out there, and it does mean that this language use often leads to people being identified as being different, or of what we talk about as being a process of othering, where they're seen as very different and almost as a not binary opposite to your to your own self-identification, and the language perpetuates that very much so, and this leads to sometimes tension, and that tension and division in communities, which is again another problem. What we also see happening in this is a process of dehumanization as well, where people that are all a part of humanity are seen as being very different, as being different from yourself and the communities you live in. Um, and it's always also perpetuated in things like stereotypes out there. This means that those words used, whether they're by politicians, political parties, or the media, means that difference is perpetuated. Yeah. And the problems that are everyday problems are seen as something specific to a certain group. Um, in the British context, also, we've also seen a range of sort of policies that have led to a further perpetuation of this difference, particularly the hostile environment. This is again a range of policies that were meant to make certain groups of those without a right to remain feel uncomfortable and not be here. However, it has in many ways impacted on a number of different groups in a range of different ways and perpetuated those fears and anxieties of other people and reinforced them onto other more vulnerable groups. So there is a real need to kind of address the issue of hostility and dehumanization and othering that is occurring through this process, um, of and the language used to talk about often migrant groups, and really needs a real shift. So what I want to really think about is a need to kind of change a narrative. We need to start thinking differently about it. I mean, why in many ways we need to sort of consider is that migration in many ways brings with it great opportunities and innovation. People around the world meet a mixing of people, ideas, brings innovations in things like music. If you think about everything from K-pop to hip hop, it's all been influenced by the migration of movement of people, arts and literature, and even cuisine. Fish and chip which is seen as quintessentially English. It's very much something that refugees have to thank for. If it wasn't for 16th century Protestants from France being refugees in the UK, and Jewish migrants as refugees as well. That coming together of what we see as a national dish wouldn't have wouldn't have been there, you know. So in very what we really need to do and really think about is how we can celebrate this. I mean, why not? You know, we need to we when there's great opportunities in music and arts and food, you know, why can't this issue of migration be seen and talked about in different ways? And one of the ways we should start doing that is maybe actually thinking about everybody as being a part of humanity. You know, we're all the same. You know, we all bring something, you know, to the party. We all bring something. You know, if you look at your fingers on your hand, you know, they can all be individual fingers, but when they're together as a fist, we're strong. And to make a greater sense of community, a greater collective, you know, it's really important for us to kind of shift that narrative, as I say, think about the positives that migration brings and think about the positives that refugees bring. And to do that, we need to kind of shift away that negativity, that process of othering there. And to do that, we need to know people as people. You know, we need to know stories and we need to know how people's experiences, there is more in common than there is more in common with others out there. So that really means, which has really been at the bedrock of our research, and it really means that we need to sort of all have some insight into the lived experiences of others to see that commonality. So if we think about migration in Britain, and particularly over the last 3 or so decades, it's important to kind of understand how refugees come to Britain. They can come in two different ways. They can come through a resettlement schemes. That very much involves people getting established outside the UK and other countries as refugees and then coming to Britain. In those in those kind of schemes, accommodation is often provided. You also, as you come, you have very much similar rights to other UK citizens, but you're also able to access welfare or any form of support, and also you're able to work. The other way of coming to Britain that refugees travel through is through what we talk about as being the asylum pathway. This is is often relates to those that come and are known as being asylum seekers. So they come in various different processes of arrival to the UK, but until they are given status, they are still seen as asylum seekers. And until they gain a right to remain in Britain, they're accommodated by the Home Office in their accommodation. They're provided that accommodation can be provided and managed by a number of sort of private companies. They have limited amount of welfare support as well, and then people aren't allowed to work. The thing is that they may not have or gain that status for a while. It could last from anything from 12 months to even a number of years. For some of the people we talked to, there was even a person who hadn't had a right to remain for 12 years. So all that period of time is people can be in almost limbo where they don't know whether they can stay. They're still in fear of persecution if they go back to their country of origin. But once they do gain status, they have 28 days to leave that accommodation and move into um, independent forms of living. And hence, there's another reason why um, why looking at housing is important. So for the last 25 years, the provision of housing or the rights has been centered to reforms of refugees, the refugee system. It was seen as something that's been a concern, and it meant that people, what we now know as, were dispersed outside the major cities, particularly London, to across the UK in places where there was more housing available. This was known as a policy of dispersal, and it meant that people were accommodated away from maybe communities of similarity, but moved around the UK in different places where housing was affordable. And there are a lot of issues that are important for the impact of refugees, such as employment, the trauma they've experienced from those experiences of being um, of the experience from their country of origin. They may also have health concerns and health issues. There's issues around language, and there might also be issues around a sense of where they are and who they are because of that kind of sense of belonging being taken away from them. All these issues are also related to housing, yeah, in different ways. And this is important because if you are, for example, sent away to where there isn't communities where there are people that share some similarity to you, you can find yourself very much alone, and if you don't know about the country you live in, the issues around health or integrating become a lot more difficult. A lot of these are then related to where you are placed then and dispersed to. But housing's also more important than that. Housing's more than just a house. You know, in your own house, you might have pictures and paintings of things that help you sort of make that place a home. Whether it's a picture of your favorite pop star or just having your favorite chair in the house. When people are displaced, they don't have that with them. So it's really important to for them to kind of create a sense of belonging, and that means housing is is crucial to that. It also allows you to kind of have a sense of connection with community and people around you. And that helps you develop that sense of belonging. If you know your neighbors, you can go out and you can celebrate with them. You have somebody to share your own feelings and what thoughts with as well. So calling a homes what we call a home is more than just a house. It's a sense of belonging and it's a sense of collection to community. And that is also what we're looking at when we're looking at housing. We're looking at all those other issues about being able to get a job, about being able to talk and mix with other people, but also having a sense of this is home. And that's really important in this. Now, housing is an issue in its own. For many of you who don't know, house building, has halved. It has a number of concerns in policy and political levels that we need to know about. The cost of a home at the moment can be anything to like 8 times the average salary. So that means people don't find it easy to buy their homes. It's not easy to rent because there's not many properties out there that are affordable. And those properties that are actually out there, like we've highlighted some of the issues here, aren't always of a good standard. 1 in 5 privately rented homes fail the decent home standards. That's a standard to say that this is effectively a good level of property and kept in good nick in many ways. And what we also find is that number of people that are homeless is also increasing. And, because of the level of temporary accommodation, because you can be thrown out the accommodation. You know, what we're finding is that there isn't enough houses that are affordable being built to help support and house people around the country. And this particularly impacts on refugee communities that are having to kind of rely on privately rented houses or social housing to kind of have that starting point of starting a new life and taking those first steps of mixing and having and developing a sense of belonging as well to communities. So that's part of the reasons why our research looked at the issue of refugees, looked at the issues of housing, which is so central to their experiences and their sense of connection with communities. And we've done this in a number of different ways, our research. And today there is me and Akosiwa here present, but there's been a number of us involved with a range of different outputs for this research. Professor Phil Brown, Jamie Halsell, as well as other members of our partners, Migration Yorkshire and community researchers, including Tom Santokh, Jose Garcia, Kate James, and Samira Mahmood, to name a few. And what we thought was important was to really talk about what we found in our research, which looked at those experiences of housing and that way in which it linked in with gaining jobs and linked in with sort of gaining educational qualifications, getting settled into the communities. But we talked to a number of people that were refugees over the last 30 years, as well as a number of people that helped support them settle in and worked with them in terms of housing, but other needs that they had. And this led to a number of our outputs here. Some of them were clearly for people that are working with them, and that was really important to us. But we also wanted to kind of look at them, highlight the issue, the importance of the issue as an academic issue, which it is, but also we wanted other people to kind of know about these stories and these issues, which has led us to kind of focus a bit more on our interactive documentary as well as our comic. Now, I'll start off with our comic. So this comic was called Transitions, the Story of Refugees. It was done in partnership with, like I said, with comic artists in Canada, Petroglypha Studios, with illustrators and story writers. Their stories were very much taken from our actual research. So we shared conversations ourselves as researchers and community researchers there, talked about the everyday experiences of housing that we heard from the people out there over the last 30 years, and just highlight some of those everyday problems that they were having. And the scriptwriter and artist got together and made this for us. Now, what I want to do from this is take a moment for us to kind of share this. So I'm just going to stop sharing this and we'll go on to the comic. I'm hoping that you can all see the comic. I'm going to let Akosiwa now talk to you a bit more about the comic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Santokh. Can you please scroll up to the first page so we can start? So Santokh has explained briefly the process of becoming a refugee. So the comic is titled Transition. So we understood from Santokh's presentation earlier that not everybody arrive in the UK with a predetermined status. Some people do, resettled refugees do, but other people come to the UK as asylum seekers, like that was explained earlier, and become refugees. So transition in this context is the when and how people move from being asylum seeker to becoming refugees and settling in the UK. They usually live in accommodation provided by the Home Office. It's all been explained earlier, but I'm just going to go over it quickly for you to explain why we titled this comic Transition. So after a positive decision, while they wait for their decision, they live in accommodation provided by the Home Office. And after the positive decision, they are usually given 28 days to move out and access the mainstream housing. So this comic depicts what happened once the status is granted, and this is about the 28 days experience and the 28 days and beyond, how refugees live and how they interact with their surrounding and how they integrate into the community. Can we move now to... So we're going to look through the comic together. So the comic is made with this is a story of everybody. This is the story of many refugees that we put together into one comic. So this is more focused on after the status is granted. You could see here that he got a letter from the postman, and he was screaming, "We've been approved." So after this is a story exactly what happened to people. Let's go through it, and once the status is granted, we stop here for now. We stop on the 28 days later. This image says a lot about transition. It says a lot about the experience refugees have. You will agree with me that newly recognized refugees often struggle not only with housing, like it was explained earlier, but with other aspects of integration. At this point, the UK is a new country and a new life is about to be built. So people are not always knowledgeable about how the country is how things are done in this country, because it's literally a new country for them, and how they should go about housing. In the UK, housing is procedural. You have to register and go through a specific process to get to be allocated a place to stay, especially if you're looking into having a social housing or a council house. You need to go through a process. So many refugees have no knowledge about that, which explain the importance of support. So the initial support is crucial at this point. This image reminds me of a story of a lady. And usually when people get to this stage, if they don't have the adequate support and they don't have the right information, or they don't get information from the right source, a lot could happen to them. They can even experience homelessness as a result, because every mistake you made at this point can lead you to experiencing something you shouldn't if you did have the support you needed. So the image remind me of a story of a participant we named C2. After a positive decision, this woman was wrongly advised by a friend to leave the home office accommodation before the 28 days period so they can have access to the council support. It's clear that she lacked information. It's clear that she wasn't knowledgeable about how the process worked. And usually the advice for peers, people who have been through the process beforehand, is often useful, but in this example, it wasn't. As a result, C2 experienced homelessness, because getting information from a wrong source can be can lead to a lot of consequences. So she experienced homelessness, unfortunately, before even getting to the right information and then turn things around. Contrary to her, to C2, we had John, another person we named John. John had it a bit easier. So his transition was a little bit easier than that of C2, because he has all the information he needed. He has the support around it, whether formal or informal. He managed to have access to the right process of registration and going through the process the council has in place. And he has the support from other people in the community as well. If we move further, you will see the type of houses people have, and the support from the community make a lot of difference. Let's go up a bit, and okay. So here you could see that the support from the community is extremely meaningful to people with refugee status. A little bit of kindness around goes a long way. So we will stop at, let's go up a bit to the next image we want to talk about, where the family is here. Okay. On this image, a bit further down, I need the image where the family is all together in their home. Yes, that one.
That one there?
That one there, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So this family, you will notice that after the 28 days period, they got into the community, they have friends who help them around, and they got a place to stay. But unfortunately, on this particular image, we could see that it's cold. It's extremely cold in the house. This really happened to someone. It reminds me of the story of a lady we name. I'm just going to check. Don't want to give you the wrong information. So yeah, this lady we name Mina. She had to go through 3 days of cold. Like she after the positive decision, she got her house, but unfortunately everything wasn't working properly in the house. So she has to spend 3 days in the cold with her baby before a neighbor in the community, someone from the community, could assist her with electric heater before the issue gets sorted for her. So I just want you to note that the support this lady received was from a kind person, a kind neighbor from the community who met her, introduced herself, and she felt like, oh, why are you so cold? You look cold and unhappy. And she shared the experience with her, and the neighbor kindly offered her an electric heater. This is what we are talking about, how your surrounding people around you can make a lot of difference in your experience, in your settling in the UK. Moving on to the next image that I would talk to you about. Before we get to that, on page 7, image on page 7, and I think another image of, yes.
Just go up to, is it this one? No.
Yes. No, yeah, that one. This image shows some of the finding of our research about the type of houses occupied by refugees. So, moving on to the last part where we have a
bit further on.
Yeah, further down. And just before we get there, I just want to stress on the kindness and the support people receive from the community. It helped them, whether formal or informal, it helped them get to the basic services they need, like registering for universal credit, having access to a bank registration, or even registering children at school. So those are elements or things that happen during the transition period. And yeah, we will stop on this image. I hope you all have time to go through this commit in your own time. On this image, you could see someone screaming and asking people to go back to where they're coming from. People really experience this, and I just want you to know that refugees do experience challenges on their way to settlement, like you could see in this image. But the good news is things usually get easier with time. They do meet hostilities like this one, but at the same time, there are kind people around to stand up for them when they feel they couldn't defend themselves. So this very image reminds me of a story of a lady we named Fatima, who felt unwelcome the same way in an area where she was told to go home. She was so frightened, and she didn't want to continue living in that area. So those experiences prompted her to leave her home and started sofa surfing, going from one friend to another, until she was advised to approach the council. The council, being a local authority, there for all of us, there for everybody, allocated a very kind support worker to this lady, who helped her find a new accommodation in a very great area. And for the to make a long story short, this lady felt so welcome in her new area. And for your information, she's been living there up till today, and it's been 18 to 19 years now that this happened. So yeah, it's very important. Housing is important for people, and it relates to a lot of other areas of their lives. So if we all can show a little bit of kindness and compassion, it makes life easier for people around us. It goes a very long way, more than we could even imagine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akosiwa. I'll just go back to our PowerPoint just to kind of, but thank you very much. But that's really, really important, the importance of kindness of strangers, but also the way in which people out there working with refugees can really make a positive change as well. That's really important. I'm just going back to that. So as you can see, the comic has helped us kind of get some insight and tell those stories, and it's an important element of storytelling, really, the comic, of quite different and diverse stories that we heard, but trying to bring them together in this format. Um, that was transitions. The other thing we also made to kind of understand these experiences, but to kind of really engage with the everyday is and how it feels, is actually try to provide the stories of refugees and those supporting them and working with them, have a platform to kind of have their voices be heard, so we know and we gain some insight. So the other element of that we kind of came together is with a professional creator, we created an iDoc and audio visual material to go with it. This is built in a games engine, and it hosts a number of short films and information that helps us kind of really experience the life as much as possible of refugees and kind of look into their homes. And again, the homes and that sense of belonging that it creates, and the way in which things around the home help provide that. And provide that insight into their lived experiences. So I'll go on to the iDoc now. For that, we'll need some sound. Here we go. So here is the iDoc, and you can go into it, and hopefully you'll hear some of the things as well. And it's made out of parts of images of the different houses that our documentary maker visited, and it does give you an insight. And again, that importance of home is very much there. And you will have access sent to you for this. Can you all hear this? Yeah. Yeah. And it's like I said, it's made out of items that our documentary maker found in the houses of the people we spoke to. And we can look in them. All we need to do is navigate our way around the house, and we can pick up different things, the elements of it, and we can have an insight of some of those experiences there.
It's difficult to find a house, because they ask for documents and all that. So if you have somebody else that have papers, then you can go like share.
So just pause it there. So what I want to do here is actually exit this doc and just give a bit of an insight of some of those experiences we're talking about. So one of the themes I want to look at here is the actual experience being a refugee. Can you hear that okay?
Means that you're displaced from your own country to a sanctuary country, to a safe place. And you've been displaced as a result of war or persecution or government suppression. So this is generally the meaning of being a refugee. You're sad, you feel sorrow, you feel grief, you feel disappointed, frustrated, you feel displaced, you feel dishonored, you feel ashamed. You know, you have a wide range of different emotions when you are rooted out from where you belong to. I think UK government is doing great in helping those families that it has relocated to the UK. The government has been really generous, giving us a settled status, which for other refugees it could take ages. So I know most of the refugees who come from Afghanistan by boat or at the back of a lorry, on average, they waited 10 years, you know, to get the status that we've been given instantly. So that was generosity. Because of our status, we've had lots of other support. We've had media attention. We've had support from organizations who are working with refugees. But all the refugees are not as lucky as we are. So those who are assumed as undocumented refugees that are living in a very poor living conditions. So the life for them is absolutely different. So they are as smart as me and as hardworking as me, even more, but because of their legal status, they still struggle to find food for their families.
The world of asylum.
So again, it was quite moving to listen to that narrative there, and it's really important that we kind of understand how it feels and some of those stories, and the iDoc is really useful for doing that, and I hope you can take the opportunity in your own time to explore that in some more depth. Just go back to this. Okay, that very much covers some of the things we want to talk about. Thank you for listening, and if there's any questions, please do ask. We'd also we'll be putting the links in for our documentary, iDoc and comic into the conversation, but we'd also like you to fill in, if you are watching this, whether outside this space, to spend some time to kind of give us some feedback on what we have provided as well. But thank you all very much at that, and we can stop the recording there.